I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. I hope this story brings you something special and leaves a pleasant impression deep inside you. In a modern city on the bank of a great river, with glass that shone in the morning and tired neon at night, there lived a young woman named Nika. She was easy to spot in a crowd. She always laughed a little louder than the rest, walked a little faster than needed, and only stopped when the DJ changed the track or a waiter set down a fresh glass. Her friends said Nika knew how to live. She herself said she didn't know how to stop. It felt like an ironic contract with the city. It gave her the night, and she gave it her mornings. Her apartment sat high, like a watchtower over the avenue, but sunlight rarely reached that space with panoramic windows. When it did, Nika was usually just getting home from the club. In the kitchen cupboard, vitamins, coffee capsules, little bottles of sedatives. In her phone, a dozen contacts labeled with emojis instead of names, and not one person she could call when things became truly frightening. She knew bartenders by name, yet didn't know the sound of her own voice when she spoke softly. Her life resembled an endless party where every next song was a bit worse than the previous one. Yet somehow no one dared to stop the music. Sometimes she told herself, a little longer, one more season, one more story, and I'll get down to work, to school, to myself. She liked boys who spoke in pretty phrases and vanished before breakfast. She could laugh at her own choices and call them adventures. Irony became her shield. If she laughed first, no one would have time to hurt her. One summer she decided to escape to the sea. Not for peace, but for another bright episode in her personal series. A place where the ocean smelled of gasoline and roses, where beaches looked like stages and clubs like portals without clocks. She checked into an apart hotel with white curtains that moved at the faintest sigh of the air conditioner, and every evening she went to catch the wave, as the bartender, a friend for 3 nights, put it. That night, everything looked as if a decent cameraman had finally taken the camera. A setting sun, a mild wind, a new company, 3 guys who talked about surfing, charity startups, and music older than they were. They laughed and let both Nika and one another into their jokes. She remembered someone saying, "Know this, we're not like that," and how easily she believed it. She remembered the first drink, the second, the taste of lime that always bleaches vigilance. After that, frames you can't splice, a blurred street, a mirrored elevator, someone's hand on her shoulder. Morning, a stranger's apartment, pillows strewn about, a ringing silence. In that silence, emptiness, and in it a chasm, pieces of memory returned like water seeping through a crack. Voices without faces, laughter that wasn't hers, the weight of foreign steps. No one needs the details. Her body explained everything before she found the words. By evening, when consciousness fully returned, Nika packed so hastily she left her favorite comb in the bathroom. She ran down the stairs as if that could undo the night. It didn't. She bought a ticket for the first flight and flew home without looking out the window, because her reflection stared back, and it didn't believe her. Days turned into blurred streaks. Long showers washed nothing important away. She slept with the light on and couldn't pass a mirror without stopping. She promised herself she'd be strong, and then trembled at a stranger's step in the stairwell. The pills friends suggested offered quiet without sleep, not peace. She could no longer let men into her life, any men, even those simply standing behind her in the coffee queue. Her body shrank to the edge of a shawl that clung to her shoulders only because they'd grown bony. One morning, she finally dialed the psychologist from her. Recommendations. Dr. Sumi Patel met her in an office with a large, window and a shelf of cacti. "If no one could change you," she said, looking closely, "it means only one thing. You can do it." There was no false hope or command in those words. They sounded like a phrase you could stitch with thread and wear under your heart. A year of slow steps began. Nika scrubbed Dawn's instead of glasses. She became a volunteer in a palliative care ward. There the smells, rhythms, and time were different. Clocks were used to measure the pauses between pain and relief, not between tracks. She held the hand of old Mr. Reed, who liked to repeat, "People don't change, kiddo. They just get tired of the old." Nika answered with a smile, and then cried in an empty supply closet, leaning against shelves with adult diapers. She mopped floors, cooked gentle soups, read novels aloud in which there was always a road home. And sometimes she believed that her road existed too. There she met Lucas. He brought new blankets of incredible crumpled shades and tucked Mr. Reed in as if he were his own grandfather. Lucas had calm eyes and a laugh that didn't cut the air. He knew how to listen. Not by nodding, but truly listening, the way you hear distant trains at night. They often crossed paths in the volunteer's kitchen. He brewed tea, she set out mugs. They talked about films with few kisses but many honest pauses, about cities where you can be silent and it still counts as a conversation. She let him into neither her secrets nor her space, and he seemed to understand. Each evening when she returned home, the city no longer looked like a fair. It looked more like a construction site, where you could build something out of what had fallen apart, but the nights, the same ones, sometimes returned. They came uninvited, like drafts in old windows. She woke to the smell of lime that wasn't there and the same elevator mirrors. She learned to breathe 4x4, to write sticky notes. "It's 0813, this is my home, I am safe," and leave them on the fridge like beacons. One day Lucas asked, not loudly and not on the run, but the way a palm is laid on a forehead to check a temperature, gently, "Why do you keep me at a distance as if I were a danger?" He asked on a bench outside the shelter, where they ate cold pizza from a box. Nika watched the pigeons for a long time, birds that always look satisfied as if they need nothing more. She decided to tell him, in order to push him away. She thought, "I'll tell him the truth and he'll leave. It will hurt once, not 100 times." And she told him. Without details, without foreign voices, only about how control over your own body can be taken and how long silence takes to return to your head. She also spoke about herself as she had been before, how she ran from party to party, how she justified chaos with the word freedom. She said she didn't trust herself, neither the former nor the current one. And she asked, "Don't rescue me. I'm not sure I know how to be beside someone." Lucas stayed silent. Then he stood up and said he had to go. He walked slowly as if measuring the distance between them, in case he ever had to walk it again. That night Nika waited for pain, but emptiness came instead. She didn't yet know that emptiness is also a place you can make livable. At dawn, her doorbell rang. Lucas stood there with a thermos and 2 paper cups. "I wanted to leave," he said without prelude. "Not because of what happened to you. Because of how you lived before. I was afraid it would hurt me if you went back to your old self. Then I realized, you're already different. Not better or worse, different. I can either watch from the side or stand beside you. But I won't enter your life with a flag and a drum. I'll come with a thermos. And if you ever want tea, I'm here." Their one step at a time began. They agreed. No grand gestures, no promises that are hard to keep. They went to morning markets, bought grapes, and gave them names of varieties that don't exist. They learned to say stop and to hear that word as law. They held hands only when both wanted it. not when it was supposed to be. For the first time in a long while, she laughed without irony, and he asked permission to touch her cheek, as if it were a rare exhibit in a museum. This didn't turn into a fairy tale, just because someone kind had appeared. The past doesn't vanish if you refuse to name it. At another session, Dr. Patel said, "If you have the strength, try to reclaim your right to justice." It wasn't pressure. It was an invitation. And one day, Nika went to the police station. She sat under an overly cold air conditioner and spoke about a night that had been too hot. Detective Mason listened carefully without interrupting. She told him what she remembered and what she did not. She didn't know their names, but she knew the bar, the evening, the familiar bartender who might recall faces. She wasn't after revenge. She wanted the thing she'd been deprived of. Choice. Unexpectedly, threads appeared where she hadn't expected them. The bartender remembered 3 guys who always ordered the same cocktail and left tips in small coins, as a signature. The cameras at the entrance caught their backs, but it was enough to begin. The investigation moved slowly, like a queue at the post office. Yet every official action, statement, testimony, photo review, returned to Nika a millimeter of her own territory. She didn't romanticize the process or keep a tally of victories. She simply stopped being only a victim and became a witness to her own story. When the detective called to say one of the men had been identified, Nika felt not triumph, but a quiet pity for the girl she had been when she believed in pretty phrases. She cried that evening, but differently. Not from helplessness, but because at last she could cry knowing the world wouldn't fall apart tomorrow. Lucas stayed near, not as a hero, but as a person. He learned to ask, "What do you need right now?" and to accept the answer, even when the answer was silence. They built a new rhythm. In the evenings, they read books aloud. On weekends, they took Mr. Reed to the park and bought him ice cream he invariably called respectable. Nika began working again. At first, part-time in a small book cafe where children's books sat at eye level. One day, a guy from that seaside walked into the cafe. Not him, one of them. Nika saw his profile and felt her heart remember the ancient gods of escape. She stepped behind the bar, took a deep breath and another. She wasn't alone. Colleagues were nearby. There was Lucas's number, and there was her voice. She called the police, briefly and clearly giving the detective's name. The man didn't even have time to lift the lid of his cup. She stood straight as they led him out. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from the bold line redrawn around her boundaries. Cases moved slowly, like winter in a city where snow is rare. But one day the court put a period at the end of the first sentence. The period didn't make the text perfect, but it gave it grammar. Nika didn't feel relief once and for all. Relief comes in layers like paint. For a long time she still dreamed of that apartment, sometimes even in color. But every night after such dreams she had a ritual. She poured tea from the same thermos Lucas had once brought, and said aloud to herself, "I made it here." One spring morning they drove out of the city to a hill where the grass grew with confidence, and the sky looked like a clean page. They sat on a blanket Lucas called the spare rainbow, and simply watched the sun rise, as if it didn't know clubs existed in the city, and people inside them mistook music for life. He took her hand and, as always, asked permission. She nodded. Their kiss wasn't a reward or an ending. It was like a new paragraph indent, a place for meaning. They joked that everyone should have an emergency backpack of joy, a playlist without toxic tracks, 3 books that restore your breath, 2 friends' numbers who answer at night, and 1 person who carries a thermos. Irony didn't disappear. It just changed its edge. Now it was like a good kitchen knife, not for playing, but for cooking. A year after that sea, Nika packed her old dresses and glitter into boxes and took them to a thrift store near the market. Not to close a gestalt, but to free a shelf for things that warm. She wrote a short letter to her former self. I don't know if you'll read me. If you do, know this. Freedom isn't where there are no rules. It's where your rules matter. Choice isn't opening every door. It's closing your own when you need to. She didn't send the letter to anyone. It didn't need to be sent. She knew her story wasn't for billboards or speeches. But when a younger woman walked into a new patient's room, with the same nervous movements Nika once had, and eyes that couldn't find a place to rest, Nika set a cup of tea before her and said, If no one has changed you, that's not a problem. You'll do it. And it's not about strength, but about small, honest steps, one after another. The woman nodded. The way those nod who aren't walking yet, but are no longer standing still. In the evening, Nika returned home. She laid books on the table and wrote 3 lines in her journal. Today I didn't run. Today I chose. Today I am alive. She turned off the light not because she feared the dark, but because she was learning to trust it. Outside, the city finally stopped being a backdrop and became a stage with safety rules. The moral didn't arrive as a poster. It grew like a plant on the windowsill, gradually. Being frank and restrained turned out not to be a contradiction, but a craft. Frankness is calling things by their names and not looking away. Restraint is not confusing truth with a confessional on a show. The thriller of her life was no longer about escapes and chases. It was about stopping on time and stepping where it's scary but right. Irony found a new home too. When Nika passed the former club where the DJ still played the city's favorite song, she smiled. The music is wonderful. I just know now when to leave the dance floor. That knowledge was worth more than any virtue random acquaintances had once attributed to her. One day Lucas asked, What would you call this story if you had to? Nika thought and answered, Probably Lessons of Silence, because silence speaks too, if you're not afraid to listen to it. They sat in the kitchen, and the kettle sang its simple aria. Outside, a frugal rain fell, the kind without ambition. She felt the little gears inside settling into place one by one. This story doesn't teach the simple, be strong and everything will pass. It teaches something else. Strength is the ability to ask for help, and to let yourself leave where you are neglected. It's the ability to call a wound, and not an adventure. It's the ability to let into the room only those who ask permission. And if you're looking for an ending, it's not here. Because the ending is every morning when you tell yourself, Today I choose myself. And that choice is more thrilling than any midnight chase. Nika turned off the light and, before falling asleep, thought of the sea. It was no longer a stage where applause gets stolen. It was water, the kind that receives those who have learned to swim not with the crowd, but with their own rhythm. And in that rhythm, music slowly appeared that she was ready to listen to all the way through. Without hurry, without foreign hands on the mixing board, with a thermos on the table and the right to say yes only when it's her yes.